Hi, everyone. My name is Emilee Syrewicze, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors for Torch Conservation Center in Alden, Michigan. And our mission is to promote stewardship of the land and water in the Torch watershed. Joining me today is a fellow board member at TCC, Keith Ross. Keith is a forester, real estate attorney, and land conservationist who in his career has conserved more than 1 million acres of land throughout New England. And Keith is joining us from his home in Massachusetts this afternoon, I guess. Hi, Keith.
I am.
We also have the distinction of both attending Vermont Law School at different times, but still attending Vermont Law School. So we should definitely give an ode to the Fighting Swans in South Royalton, Vermont today.
Yes. And I can say one of the things I learned at law school was that I didn't want to have to work as a lawyer.
Me too. So great. All right, Keith. So
love the education, but
yes. Great. Well, fantastic. So one thing that Torch Conservation Center is doing over the next several weeks is we're conducting various short interviews with experts in various fields. And our goal is to give the people who live in the Torch Lake Watershed, people who visit, who love it, who care about it, the information and the tools they need to help us in our mission to protect and steward Torch Lake and the surrounding land area. So you are an expert in land conservation, and we're very fortunate to have you on our board. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and help us understand as just regular citizens what land conservation is, why it's important. So most basically, what is land conservation, and why is it important to Torch Lake?
Well, the land around Torch Lake, the land in the watershed, is what supplies all the water to the lake. And I mean, there's springs that come up underground, but many of those springs are fed, back up off the watershed, in the farmlands and open forest lands around it. So conserving the natural landscape, either farmlands, forest lands, wetlands, are all key to maintaining good water quality within the lake, as well as wildlife habitat, scenic vistas, public drinking water. I mean, there's a lot of public values in private lands that we all benefit from. So there's a lot of state and federal programs and tax benefits that have been created to assist private landowners in helping them conserve portions of their land. At the Watershed Torch Conservation Center, we're interested in helping landowners accomplish those tasks. That's why we have the nonprofit tax status that allows donors of conservation on their land to take advantage of the state and federal tax benefits. It also allows us to raise money from other nonprofits and individual donors to be able to participate in the cost of conserving that land, either through the analysis, surveys and other work that needs to go into it, and in many cases actually purchasing those development rights. We work with a number of other larger, more experienced groups, such as the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, who does a great job in our watershed, but they cover a much bigger area, and we're focused specifically on the watershed around Torch Lake.
Excellent. So what are the biggest challenges to conserving land in the Torch Lake watershed?
Well, there's a number of different challenges. I mean, one of them is that people never want to think about what's going to happen to them after they pass away and what's going to happen to their land. So, getting out ahead of that, making decisions ahead of time, talking with their families about what they'd like to see happen to the land. Those are all important decision processes that, you try to encourage families to do, but, they try to do it on their own time frame. There's also a big demand for, new housing and development that goes on. And for many landowners, the fastest way to generate income is to sell a building lot or sell some land to generate that income. Land conservation projects take a while. They're not something that's going to happen immediately, but understanding where your property fits in the landscape, what does it influence, what's nearby, is always an important thing to take your time to learn about your property, so you understand the importance it has for a much greater area.
Excellent. So now, for people listening and for people who are just now sorting out what land conservation is and how it can be beneficial to the watershed, you know, what is needed to conserve more land in and around Torch Lake Watershed, and how can people help in that effort? What's the best way?
So, you know, there's a couple ways to think of land conservation. You know, they might think of wanting to retain the land, keep it in the family, and they could use a tool called a conservation restriction or conservation easement, which means the land stays in private ownership, but it can never be developed or dug up for gravel or paved over for parking areas. So it stays in forest and farmland. It can pass from generation to generation, and its value is reduced significantly because it can no longer be developed. In some cases, people don't have heirs, or they don't really want to hang on to the land, so they could gift it and get a tax benefit, or they could sell it to a conservation organization who will keep it in that conservation use. So there's several ways to do that, and you know, families need to think about it and take the time to sort through what the different interests are within family members, and then figure out what's the best tool that they could utilize. And that's where the land conservation trusts come in. They can be very helpful in advising families how the different tools work, how they can be applied in their particular location, and be able to figure out if there's any opportunity for them to actually generate income from the sale of these development rights or the sale of the land for conservation. That takes time, and you know, most all land conservation trusts, they're very good about maintaining privacy with the landowners they speak with, and they're the ones who then can go out and raise the money that's going to be necessary to complete a transaction for most families. It's a rare family that can afford to gift these valuable properties, and most land trusts understand that, and so they work closely with the landowners and with their funders to figure out the best way to raise the money necessary to complete the transaction.
Well, and I think that kind of segues into my last little plug for Torch Conservation Center. You know, let's say you're out there and you're not a major landowner, or you don't have land to donate or conserve, but you still want to support the efforts. I think this is a good time to bring up that Torch Conservation Center, we have started a land conservation fund. And for people who just want to support that effort, making a contribution of a financial contribution to that fund is one way to support conservation efforts. So is that something, I mean, obviously as board members, we want to support that, but in your experience, is that a very helpful financial contributions to conservation funds? Is that a very helpful way to support conservation if you're not a large landowner?
It's a key element to protecting land in the watershed. The financial support from members of the organization or people who just support the region and want to maintain its unique characteristics, financial gifts is one of the best ways to do that. You know, another way that's very popular as well is making a gift through your will, so that the money comes to the organization at some point in the future. There's a number of other financial opportunities that you can design with your accountant and your attorney to provide income now and a benefit to the land trust after you pass away. So income, money, finances, that's the key to bringing these projects together. Just in the sense of helping provide some funds for people to do the analysis they need to figure out what is the value of their land. What would be the value of a conservation restriction if they put one on their land? So those are things that we help pay for: surveys, appraisals, title exams, all the things that we can do to help a family get the information they need to make a decision. So those are all funded by grants that we write to state agencies, to foundations, but the biggest source of money for conservation comes from individuals.
Thank you so much. If you are out there listening today and you're interested in making a contribution to our Land Conservation Fund, or generally becoming a member to support Torch Conservation Center, visit conservetorch.org. All of the information is online, and we would welcome the support and the help with our efforts to conserve Torch Lake and the surrounding watershed. Keith, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so grateful. I know your time is limited, but you're a wonderful resource for us, and we're very lucky to have you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Emily. We're lucky to have you as well. And don't forget, they can get a nice hat to go along with their donation. So we would appreciate your support. Thanks.
That's right. Bye.
Bye.